Welcome back, everybody, and thanks for watching. Today we're going to be working on adding another addition onto our wood racks that we already have. So here's some of the things you got to have if you're going to be doing this. You're going to need a box of screws. You can get away with just nails if you want, but I found out over time this will be my 11th rack I've built, and if you don't use screws you end up with it all coming apart over time, and so you're going to at least want to put some of those in. Depending on the type of roofing, we're going to continue to use the steel roofing like we already have to the best of our ability. Because the steel prices have shot up in the last few months, it's become very expensive now just to go buy a new sheet or two of that metal roofing to put on. It's actually almost more expensive than the wood you have to buy to build the rest of the rack if you're going to build it. But we prefer to just go ahead and get some wood from the Lowe's or Home Depot, and then that's what we have over here on this side of the trailer. And you can get away with untreated wood that's not in contact with the ground. That'll lower your costs a little bit, but you definitely want to have treated lumber for anything that's going to be coming into ground contact. So anything that comes in ground contact, you'll want pressure treated lumber for that, but anything above you can probably get away without it. The other things you'll want to have is saw for cutting up the different lengths of boards for the different parts of it, a couple drill drivers, at least one ground anchor. You'll need two if it's your first rack that you're building, your anchor driver adapter. And we don't have any electricity nearby out here, so I just bought a power inverter. That power inverter will run that saw off either the battery of the tractor, or I'll bring a separate battery out here and we'll run it. One of the other things that we use here, and of course I'm a big fan of diesel engines, as you guys know, and I don't know if I had a video of this yet. I think I started one years ago and I never finished it. I picked up a couple of these diesel air compressors off of a military surplus website, and I thought I got a pretty good deal. I mean, it wasn't super cheap, but you had to bid on them or whatever, but I think I got two of them for like 700 bucks, which I thought was okay. Of course you can get for 700 bucks you can get a decent one, gas powered one or whatever, but it's just something I wanted to pursue, and so I picked them up, and they both really had no issues with them that I found. Just took a little while to figure out what all had to be done. There's not a whole lot of documentation a lot of times when you pick up this stuff about how it works, but thought I'd give it a good cold start try here. It is equipped with the grid type heater on 12 volt and does have electric start, which is nice, but I don't have a battery with it, so I end up jump starting it, or I should say using jumper cables off of a tractor or something if I do want to use some heat. But it's about 30 degrees Fahrenheit right now, and we're going to see if it's going to start without any provisions. And yesterday was about the same temperature, and it surprisingly started fairly well at 30. Usually once you get down to about 30, and it really gets difficult once you drop to 25 or 20 to start these. But Simon needs this to finish up the legs on here, so I'll go ahead and get it started for him. He still doesn't have enough experience yet to get this running on his own, so but we'll keep working on that as time goes on. And one key thing here is you want to put the bypass on the compensator, or the it's not the compensator, that is the, oh, what do they call it? It evades me now what the name of that is, but it's essentially the automatic unloading valve, I guess, but I think there's another name for it. But you want that bypass so that it's not sending air from the compressor to the tank, and that unloads the engine a little bit more than if it's on. And set your fuel. It's got the old manual spring governor setting, and then the decompression on the exhaust valve. And we'll see if she'll start. And sometimes you don't always have to hit the automatic decompression lever, is what I found, but every once in a while you'll get caught. It jerks your arm back, but if you don't set that, it gives you a good another revolution or so to help start. And that time it didn't. But it can jerk your arm back, so you Gotta be careful with that. Boy, usually I get lucky on one of those. That warm up a little bit. The other thing is, if you already have one of these built already, it's nice because you can use the existing end and just piggyback onto those that are existing already, and you'll need a couple of these hangers, and we'll put those right on the existing ones and extend that, and then we can reuse this existing side, which will help a lot, and then that eliminates a ground anchor, a strap, and all of this support, and that saves you a little bit of money. A couple things we're going to do different as I build these. I try to make some improvements. One of the first things you can do, you probably might be able to see it already, it tends to kind of bow in the middle because there's not really a lot of support. And so one thing I'm going to start doing is turning this 2x4 so it's going to be in line or parallel with the face of the wood. Same thing with the back side. It'll give us a little more strength. And the other thing that's going to be an improvement is we have cross pieces to keep the rear steady, and then help also as a guide for the wood as you're putting it in to help prevent it from falling over. But what I found is, again, the corners aren't really the problem, it's the middle that tends to bow out. So we're going to actually bring this cross in a little bit closer together and catch it a little bit more in the middle. There's two advantages to that. One is it helps give strength to the side of the wall, and in addition you're actually going to get some more length out of it. And if you use 16-foot lumber, this will give you about 15 feet wide and about 7 foot tall. The other option you got is to make it higher if you want to stack it higher. If you get going too high, of course, then you're going to have problems with it potentially falling over. But as you can see in the front, we put a board across, and that helps, gives us that height and keeps most of the wood in facing the south. And that's one thing you want to keep in mind. You want these south facing if you can. Get that sunshine on there to help dry that wood as much as possible. Some people might say, well, you don't really need to do that, you can just stack and it will dry, and I don't doubt that at all. But anything you can help yourself with, anytime you can keep water off, rain, or any other of the elements, you're just going to be able to make sure that wood stays dry when it is dry, and then helps dry it along the way, especially if you get that south-facing sun. So stick with us. Hope you have some fun. Hope you learned something. Got any comments, put them below. All right, we can't get the saw to work. What's going on? So for this one, yeah, but you want to hook both of those up. So this, to get the full amount of power out of here, you should have both leads hooked up. So you want to, that's not your problem, but you'll want to make sure that saw draws quite a bit. It probably, this is a 2 kilowatt inverter, and the saw is probably 1200 watts or so.
All right.
So you want to have at least both of these hooked up best you can.
Okay.
And then to turn the switch on.
Yes. Go look.
Maybe the battery on the tractor's dead.
See, on.
Is the light on? Yep, light's on.
Plugged in, it's plugged in. I turned the switch on for this.
Oh, that's the laser. That you can leave on.
Whatever, Wait, what? It didn't work for me.
Alright, we'll take a little snapshot of where we are today. We got about most of the structure up right now. And just a couple side notes as we went along. You probably don't need to have these little steel pockets to put them into. You can probably just butt them up against the other 2x4s. As I build more of these, these racks are really forgiving. You got a lot of opportunity to, everything certainly doesn't have to be perfect or square. And so one thing you want to pay attention to here is how wide this ends up being, because as you make this base wider, of course you're going to end up with having to cut longer logs to bail so they don't fall through there. There's a little bit of elevation change between these two racks, and that's why our cross pieces didn't wind up being centered. We're a little bit high on the left side. On this end we implemented the change where we turn the 2x4s sideways, will give us a little bit more horizontal strength. So now we're to the point where we got to run our 16-foot 2x4s across the top, and that'll give us our mount for the steel, which we got here. And again, steel is going to be, at least today, is one of our most expensive parts of this. If you have to buy new, fortunately enough, we were able to pick this up really cheap. It's used, it's full of holes, but we'll show you in the end how you can kind of deal with some of that. And then the next step is to go ahead and put our feet along the bottom, kind of like what we already have there. And that's one advantage of this type of rack, because it does help accommodate any changes in elevation along that 15 or 16 feet. All right, things are starting to shape up pretty good here. One thing I'd recommend if you're putting cross pieces in here, make sure you don't put too few of those in here, because I've had it where I just put like one or about 2 or 3 in the whole thing, and those runners actually ended up collapsing on me. So more the merrier. Again, ground contact. And now we're putting the legs in and keep those roughly 1.5 to 2 feet apart. Again, that's going to be your load bearing members, and you want more of those rather than less, and recommend putting screws in them rather than just nails, because they will work themselves loose over time. The other thing we want to do is, before we start putting the roofing on, it is windy today, we want to make sure things are secured. You want your knee brace put in, and then we're going to put a ground anchor in and a strap to hold this corner up, or it from falling forward. And that's one of the things with these wood racks, because they are so tall and narrow, you need to be able to spread out that footprint so they don't tip over. Make sure they're secured to the ground, otherwise they will fall over on you. The other thing that doesn't hurt is if you have them tip back a little bit. It's okay to have them a little bit higher in the front than the back. One thing you'll find, and you kind of see it in these existing wood racks, is the wood is kind of leaning forward. And it's not because we necessarily put it in that way, but what happens is over time, as the front of the wood rack dries, the wood shrinks on this side, and so it wants to tip over. So every once in a while you got to go through and kind of push it back up there again. And so having these lean back a little bit to begin with is not a bad idea. Over time they'll settle, and sometimes you can't help that, but we'll go ahead and get a ground anchor put in, then we'll start working on the roofing. And I'll put a link to the tool in the comments below. This is kind of a handy tool for putting in ground anchors. If you don't have this, you can put them in with a bar. Obviously you can make your own as well, but I found this is pretty handy for putting in ground anchors, and it adapts quite a few different types. So probably ran into a little root there. We'll have to get something a little more torque to get past that. And then once that's done, we'll go ahead and put a strap on here. You can see I just use ratchet straps. Over time, you can probably, once things settle in a little bit, you can probably replace those with just a piece of rope or something less expensive and reclaim your ratchet straps. And then never had one fall over. I've had the wood fall out of them because it did lean too much, and the base collapsed, but never had anything that brought the whole wood rack itself down. All right, we're just about done. The last couple things are putting up the last support 2x4 beam so the rack doesn't fall over. And then if you're reusing sheet metal like we did here, you can see where there's holes in there. You just gotta take a little tube of silicone and go squirt it in there, and that can stop those if you're worried about a little bit of water coming in. It looks like the rest of these are in pretty good shape, so we don't have a whole lot here to come back and do. One thing I wanted to show you with the cross braces being a little bit closer together versus the other two racks that we talked about probably earlier, this gives us a little more width to allow us to put some more wood in while keeping the same height. And if we take a look at what we got here, inside to inside, you're looking at roughly say 15 1/4 feet. And if you get an effective height of how high you can actually go with this before you run out of room, you're looking at about 80 inches, or say 6.5 feet, a little over that. And if you cut 16-inch long logs, you'll find that if you multiply that all together, you'll be really close to 128 cubic feet, which is about one complete cord, or is one complete cord. Therefore, for every one of these racks you build, you can count on about one full cord. And the nice thing is almost all the major dimensional lumber you really don't have to cut very much of. This, by the time you move these cross pieces out, you only got to cut very little off of those 16-footers to make them fit, so you almost use all of your material. Really the big thing, you got to do a lot of cutting, of course, for the legs and some of the cross pieces, but I'll put a list of the supplies you need to complete one of these together, and either include in the video or in the description below. And now our next task is getting these filled, and hopefully this will give us some good lumber or good wood to burn over the next few years and last us many years with the ground contact 2x4s. I expect to get maybe a decade out of them. You can see these are already weathering. These are only 2 years old, but they're showing a fair amount of weathering already, and they'll get to a point where they stop, but it kind of looks like they're getting kind of weather beaten. And one thing, if you end up putting this, what I call it, a beam, support beam across here, or gate, I guess, you'll need to flip that over every year or so because you'll get some sag in it. And I just construct it with the 2x4s just to give it a little more strength this way. And if you really want to give it some more strength, you could put another vertical 2x4 along here and make an I-beam out of it. But the single 2x4s really doesn't have enough support. It needs the ridge in the back to make it stronger, at least this construction, if not the full I-beam. But then of course it gets heavier and harder to deal with. Again, thanks for watching. Hope this guy gives you guys some ideas, and we'll keep doing little projects like this. If you like things, like seeing stuff like this, please subscribe and like the videos. It helps me. My goal is to get it to 1,000 subscribers, and after 10 years it's pretty slow going, and it was really never my goal to do anything more than just share videos, and I'm still at that point right now. I'm not in it for the money. If I was, I'd be in a world of hurt, I can tell you that much. But I do like sharing stuff. I love how YouTube has helped me with so many things and showed me ideas that I would have never thought of on my own, and it's really helped me a lot. So it's the least I can do is to give back. Not saying that my ideas are any better or the things I do. I actually hope that you see some some of my mistakes that either I admit or I don't even realize, and that helps you get to where you're trying to go, either more cost effectively or more efficiently, or whatever it might help you to get to the things you're trying to accomplish the easiest way possible. And it's great to share those ideas. Thanks for watching, and we'll hopefully see you here back next time.